Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, the city of Al-Quds has been the scene of several acts of aggression by the soldiers of occupation and Jewish settlers since the beginning of the month of Ramadan, especially in the neighborhoods of Bab al-Amud and Sheikh Jarrah, whose residents are threatened with eviction for the benefit of the settlers. We see that the attacks against the Muslims in Al-Quds have intensified in the last week of the blessed month of Ramadan. Even though we have witnessed the Zionist aggression against the Muslims in Palestine for decades now, the latest attack on Masjid al-Aqsa during the last 10 days is unprecedented. I want to bring to your attention some matters connected to the recent escalation in Al-Quds which every Muslim needs to know. We see that the enemies of Islam are always looking to benefit from chaos and misery in the Muslim lands, and these recent events are no different. The enemies of Islam are experts in muddying the waters so that they can confuse the Ummah and divert its attention elsewhere. We see for decades that the Americans have been trying to settle the Palestinian issue through a two-state solution model, which would lead to Israel being recognized as a legitimate part of the Middle East. However, there have remained a few sticking points which have been difficult to resolve, such as the right of return for those Muslims driven out of their lands in 1948, and also the status of Al-Quds and the status of the sacred precincts, which we know as Haram al-Sharif. In regards to the status of the sacred precincts in particular, the Americans have pushed the idea of internationalizing the sacred precincts as a way of settling this dispute. So even though the new Biden administration will not undo Trump's policies such as accepting Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, we see that it has, however, at the same time profited from this tension on the ground to prove that Israel is incapable of protecting the rights of the Palestinians and the right to worship for non-Jews in Al-Quds, and ultimately it wants to generate an international climate pressing for internationalizing the sacred precincts. However, we see that Israel had actually anticipated this step and set about besieging Al-Quds with settlement belts, focusing on usurping the land, expelling Muslims through the annexation law, and demolishing all the monumental buildings adjacent to Al-Aqsa Mosque in order to Judaize the city and seize the sacred precincts. Through these circumstances and the escalation against the people of Al-Quds by the herds of settlers who have never intensified their aggression against the courtyards of Al-Aqsa during the last 10 days of Ramadan before, and with the backing of the Israeli courts and police forces, it seems that the Israeli authorities have initiated a host of physical steps in an accelerated manner to complete Judaizing Al-Quds and expelling the Palestinians from its districts, just like what they did with the Maghribi Quarter in 1967. Brothers and sisters, I'm sure you'll agree with me that we must do everything we can to stop the Zionist plan of Judaizing the city of Al-Quds. However, we must also totally reject any calls for the internationalization of the sacred precincts, the Haram al-Sharif, Masjid al-Aqsa, even though this idea will be sold as being something which will benefit and favor the Muslims. What we must understand is that the plan to internationalize Haram Sharif is no different than the Zionists taking it. We would be giving up our right to Al-Quds and Masjid al-Aqsa. We would be tearing up the treaty signed by Khalif Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and this would be a betrayal of the blood shed by the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when taking this blessed land. Brothers and sisters, internationalizing the sacred precincts and placing them under international custodianship with Israeli sovereignty on the ground and Jordanian guardianship of the residents is one of the aspects designed to settle the Palestinian issue once and for all. Just think about it for a moment. Internationalizing the sacred precincts would secure international protection for the illegal state of Israel. It guarantees the Jewishness of its state and turns the liberation of Al-Quds into a rebellion against international law and consensus, and the price of liberating Palestine would be a confrontation between the Muslims and the entire international community. Brothers and sisters, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, the believer is not stung from the same hole twice. This means that being politically aware is a characteristic of the believer, and this includes being aware of the problem facing the Ummah and what the solution is. The enemies of Islam are once again throwing dust in the eyes of the Muslims. However, we must be aware of their plots and plans and respond accordingly. There is a quote attributed to Albert Einstein in which he is alleged to have said, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." When it comes to the issue of Palestine, brothers and sisters, are we not acting in the same way? For how long will we continue looking towards organizations such as the UN, the Arab League, the OIC, and even the Western governments to solve the issue of Palestine? For how long will we consider every possible avenue other than the one commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the solution? Brothers and sisters, the solution to this problem is clear. The only path towards rectifying the situation is by establishing the Khilafah and declaring jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to uphold His word supreme. This is the only path and there is no other. Since jihad, which is the only legitimate solution, it is high time every Muslim sacrificed for the sake of his deen and sanctities and drew closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through assiduous and serious work towards resuming the Islamic way of life, establishing the Khilafah on the method of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.